Hello and welcome to week 4. The focus this week is setting up your literature matrix. By now you have the rationale, which is the significance and the background to your study, your purpose statement, which incorporates your PICO statement, part of your method sections that includes a detailed explanation of your exhaustive search strategy. Now we need to collect the data from the articles which you have identified in your search. The purpose of the matrix is to create order out of chaos. This matrix is going to help you organize and standardize your data so that your group can better analyze. This literature matrix is going to serve like a statistical database if you were analyzing quantitative data. The format of the matrix will dictate what information or data you will be extracting from each of your articles. The more explicit you and your team are at the beginning, the more standardized your data collection will be among your group members, and the easier it will be to analyze. Once again, the key to rigorous data collection using the literature matrix is organization, and this is similar to your search strategy. The other key word is systematic. The data must be systematically extracted from each article by each group member. The data collector must also systematically collect information that will address your purpose statement. Organized and systematic, but that being said, one must be open to change. As in your search strategy, you may have had difficulty the first attempt where you had to refine your search strategy and try the search strategy again. And in developing a matrix framework, you may have to also adjust. Develop your framework with your team. Attempt to extract data from a couple of the same articles and then reconvene to see if your framework is working. Are your team members consistently extracting the same information? Are you identifying information that will allow you to answer the question? At this time, you may need to adjust the matrix framework. Now let's get to how to determine what data you would like to collect and what the framework will look like. This is generally what your literature matrix will look like. Pretty much a table of your data sources and the information you're extracting. The top row will be the data that you're extracting, one cell for each datum. For example, you'll have article information, or study design, or population, or intervention, or outcome variable, or results. Now let's take a closer look. This column is identifying the study design for each study that you've included in your review. However, the matrix again is individualized to your purpose question. So you may have inclusion criteria that you are only looking at randomized control trials. So you may not need a column that extracts study design since they are all randomized trials. So how do you determine the columns, the data, the topics, or other categories of variables that you will extract? The first column or columns, you want to put enough identifying information so you can identify each article you're using. Some people may want to split this into more than one column and put a year in a separate column so that the data can be organized by year. Some people may want to put the whole information in one cell, for example, in the APA or AMA citation format. B, you want to make sure you have the columns to extract the data to answer your purpose question, your objective statement. You want to make sure you have the intervention or the population or the control or comparison group. You want to have the outcomes and then the results. You may have a column or columns for methodological considerations, maybe biases or study design or sampling design, study strengths, study weaknesses. You do want a column for quality appraisal, which we will be discussing a little bit later in the course. D, consider content-specific characteristics. Again, this goes back to answering your question. But you would say, for example, look at results and extract specific statistical results that you will need to answer your question. Say, for example, that the intervention group was twice as likely to exhibit depressive symptoms than the control group. Each row will have a unique study that has been included in your review. As you will go across the row, you will extract information in each column. If after looking at the study, you decide to exclude it because it doesn't meet specific inclusion criteria, mark the study excluded and specific rationale. Keep in the matrix for now so that you can later look back and determine reasons for study exclusion and why your sample size of studies has decreased. You may like a column for this purpose of study exclusion. For the second row and each subsequent row, you and your teammates will independently extract data from each study. You may want to first try a couple studies together and then divide the studies in each abstract independently. After each individual extraction, you can then merge the data together. So let's review and go into more details the columns that you may want to include in your matrix. First, you want your article identification columns, the authors, the year of publication, the title of the article, the volume, the number, the series, the source. For example, your column may look like this, with the authors, date of publication, the title, name of the journal, volume, and page number, just like an APA format. Or you may want to split this column so that the years are all separate so that you can organize the articles and look at the historical time frame of the publications. Other important columns include the study purpose, the intervention, study design, the comparison group, the results, the population, the N, the setting, the variables, including the outcome measures, the dependent, independent, or control. Again, the variables is a column that you can split into separate columns, such as the outcome variable, the independent variable, the control variable, or you may want to include it in just one column. Other columns you may think to include funding source. For example, if you were looking for sources of bias, or the reasons for exclusion as we discussed before, or perhaps a column for strengths and a column for study weaknesses. Some studies use big data or large national data surveys for their data source, so you may want a column for that. Perhaps you're looking at the conceptual frameworks for the study, and you may also want a column that you can use for notes. Other options you might want to discuss with your group is, do you want to keep like information in one column? For example, the sample column includes the N, the setting, sample characteristics in one column. Or you may want to break that down. You have a sample characteristics and then you break it down to N, number of subjects, subject characteristics, gender, age, race, SES, sample design. You want to decide as a group how you're going to do this. Maybe after first couple extractions, when you get together again, you may want to switch your decision. Whatever decisions you make on the columns, you want to make sure you get the pertinent points of each study, the pertinent points that you're going to use for the analysis of all of your studies. And you don't want to include too much detail that you get lost in. You and your group are going to decide which spreadsheet format works best for you. You want to think about which is best for data extraction, which is best for merging your data with your other group members, and which is the best for examining that data. You can use Microsoft Excel, Microsoft Word, or Numbers Apples, among a few choices. You want to make sure that the format that you use is compatible with your colleagues. Will you be able to merge the data together and not lose any information? You want to make sure your format allows you to reorganize data. For example, can you look at your study by date and look at the timeline that the studies happened? Or can you look at it by category of study design? I want to re-emphasize the importance of checking your matrix after a few data extractions by your team members. Is the matrix format working for you? Are you excluding or extracting the same data? Are you using consistent terminology? This will all make it easier when you go to analyze the data. So, in conclusion, plan your matrix and what you're going to extract. Do a couple of extractions with specific studies. Study how that is working with your group members and adjust or act on your next extractions. Good luck. This data collection does take a lot of time. It's a lot of work, and we'll talk soon about data analysis, what we're going to do with all this good data.